What is going on, everybody? I am AJ, and I'm going to do a little AMA. Ask me anything prior to UFC 261. Wanted to get this out. I was very busy during the week. Didn't get as much notice, as much leisure as I would like to get the content out early. So I had to prioritize some other stuff, get ahead of the schedule. And as a result, we're here and I'm doing a little AMA for you guys prior to the event. Obviously, PFL is going on right now. That's a fun event. We have actually content for that on dailyfanmma.com. I'm actually going to be watching that after I get off here. But yeah, really looking forward to this UFC event. We're here to talk about that. Just ask me anything you guys want in the comments, just DraftKings, anything. I mean, I'm not going to say specifically what plays that I made or specific lineups that I'm making, things like that, but just some general questions like, do you think that this fighter is going to be popular in tournaments, or do you think that this fighter has high upside, or do you think this fighter is a viable cash game target? Things like that I'm more than willing to talk about. So can't talk about my bets. I'm behind a paywall for the time being. You can catch my bets on dailyfanmma.com. That is the site that I am pleased to be joined with by Brett Apley. I have technically 3 plays, but 2 of them kind of going hand in hand for the event. So if you'd like to access that, dailyfanmma.com is a site where we don't just offer like bets and breakdowns. It is just an abundance of information that you could utilize. I mean, literally, I was using the optimizer earlier today. I made 150 lineups pretty much just flawlessly. It's very easy to use, navigate, and it just gives you a lot of resources to succeed on an event-to-event basis, and most importantly, long-term. It's not with the subscription to Daily Fan MMA. It's not as if like, oh well, if these bets don't come through, then you're not getting your money's worth. No. There's so much more to it than that, and that's why I really am happy to be contributing to such an awesome site. Let's just field some questions here. I got some comments. Steve, what's up, Steve? LFG, yeah, man. Thanks for hanging around as always. Thank you for your support, brother. I appreciate it, and let's do this, man. Are you tracked on Bet MMA? Asked Ayub. Apologies if I pronounced that wrong, but Ali here. Yes, sir, I am. betmma.tips/Anthony S364. It's also in the in my Twitter bio. So all third-party tracked and verified. Been there since the beginning of 2019. It's actually funny that you bring it up because it's just funny how my betting journey all started. I actually did not start. The first bet that I ever placed, I actually tracked it on betmma.tips, and then sort of like the success sort of spiraling is what really prompted me to realize that I want to do this for a long period of time. Not only was I good at it, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process. I like watching the fights, obviously. So to answer your question in short, though, yes, I am. Yeah, Anthony S364, betmma.tips/Anthony S364. Also, AJ's Bets is like the display name on there. So if you're curious, there you go, man. And good luck to you on the events. So yeah, I guess since somebody's asking any more questions besides that, please feel free to leave anything you'd like in the comments. Of course, the more pleasant comments, the better. But yeah, let's just run through this card a little bit, right? We got 3 title fights: Usman versus Masvidal, a rematch. We've got Rose and Zhang, the most closely contested fight per the betting odds for the event. We've also got Andrade and Shevchenko featured as well for the 125-pound strap. And then we've got some other intriguing fights. Chris Weidman versus Uriah Hall, a rematch that is several years in the making, about a decade or so in the making. Anthony Smith versus Jim Crute, a prospect versus veteran type of matchup. And then we've got a lot of newcomers on this card, right? A lot. Jeffrey Molina, Kwai-Lang Ari, if I'm pronouncing that right. Apologies if I'm not. Nia Liang, Zhu Rong. I mean, like Pat Sabatini. I mean, this is just a card that features a lot of fighters that are either making their debuts or they're just not very experienced in the UFC. And so as a result, I think that there's a bigger edge to be had because not as many people want to go back on fighters' regional tape and actually like dive into the types of fighters that these folks are, right? And so as a result, we kind of might see some inaccurate betting lines. And I understand that the angle of people maybe not wanting to put a lot of stock investing in these fighters making their debuts. I personally don't like to do it. I do it on occasion. But there are definitely some spots that can be capitalized on. Like, for instance, Ilya Taporia was an underdog to Yusuf Zalal, when in hindsight, that was a pretty dreadful matchup for Zalal. And Taporia was the underdog. He came through. There was also Khamzat Chimaev in his UFC debut against John Phillips as a minus 245 favorite. I was able to tip him out as a play, Khamzat, taking on John Phillips, where, again, he was just an absolutely terrible matchup, stylistic matchup for Phillips, yet he was only minus 245 on the betting line. So there are opportunities like that you could capitalize on if you do your research. I'm not to say that that's the case with every newcomer matchup, but there are opportunities out there, just like we've talked about in the past with these hype trains, right, where they get overinflated in the betting line, and in that right matchup, I'm willing to take a shot on the underdog if the stylistic matchup makes sense. If the hype is inflating the betting line a little bit too much. And again, I want to pick and choose with those spots. Like, for instance, I brought up Brunson against Holland. I brought up Poirier against McGregor the second time, and obviously those are examples where it did work out. There's been times where I took the shot on the underdog and it didn't. But long term, that is definitely an angle to be had, right? So again, it comes down to how much research are you willing to do, right? How much, and that is going to just be contingent on and how much success you want to have in this game long term, right? I mean, there is a correlation, I really believe, and I noticed it with my own results. The more research I did, the more diligence I did with my notes, my note taking, just organizing them, just being as specific and detailed as possible, my results really skyrocketed in a big way. And it took me to experience a bit of a slump last year to really hone in on my handicapping process and really level up the way that I'm doing my process on an event-to-event basis. And so, again, I know that not everybody wants to do this. Not everybody wants to take notes and watch film. I get it. But at the same time, that is what makes me at least successful. I don't know everybody else. Everybody's got a different story. But that is something that I like to do. The hard work pays off, just like with anything else, right? So there's definitely a correlation with that. Just in being an independent thinker, right? I mean, I'm not doing anybody any good if I do my homework and then somebody that I form an opinion, and then somebody I respect says something that contradicts what I say, and then I automatically just flip my pick, right? I'm not doing anybody any service with that, right? Because if I'm just changing my opinion just based on somebody else's opinion, what good am I doing anybody? That just tells myself that I could be easily swayed, and I don't want anything to do with that. I want to make my own decisions. Of course, I am open to hearing other people's feedback, opinions. I love to hear everybody's thoughts, but I want to make the best decision possible for me based on the information that I can make for my own analysis. Again, I respect people's opinions greatly, but I also want to embrace being an independent thinker, right? So if there's a contrarian stand that I want to take, I'm riding with it. Again, and I'm not going to just be contrarian just to be contrarian. I mean, you could sort of naturally be contrarian by just filtering everything out and just by doing your own homework and just not even listening to anybody throughout the fight week. I mean, I used to listen to people's podcasts in the past during fight week, but I would wait until after I was on my research. Now it just doesn't even, I mean, I love all these guys in the industry that doing their homework, and I love what they do. I don't have time to like really listen to them. So as a result, kind of by coincidence, if you will, I'm not really listening to anybody's opinions. And as a result, I'm putting myself in a better position to ride with that unique opinion up until lineup lock in the case of DFS or fight time in the case of betting. Shawnee Mac, what's up, buddy? What's up, buddy? How you doing? Thanks for joining, brother. Appreciate you. So that's basically where I'm coming from, right? Because again, by chance, we sort of echo the same points as everybody else. But I think that we're better off sort of embracing our own uniqueness with our sort of opinions on the fights and whatnot. And that's what I want to do. And that could give you a real edge in DraftKings or FanDuel, whatever DFS site you do. I mean, think of every single lineup that has won, right? It's always been like a surprise of who made the winning lineup, at least one of them, right? And it's because if you listen to so many podcasts, so many different podcasts throughout the week, and you hear the same thing basically over and over again for each fighter, it makes it seem like those outcomes that are being talked up are a lot more likely than they are. And almost maybe it's going to come to fruition sort of naturally, right? When we've seen plenty of times that doesn't happen. There are various ways a fight could play out. So it's always important that I remind myself to be mindful of, to realize that there's many different ways a fight could play out. Again, just because I bet a fighter in a matchup, and I'm confident they win, doesn't mean that I'm going to target the other side in DFS. I'm not going to let my ego get in the way, right? I want to sort of embrace the open-mindedness, the variance of this game, because there is a lot of randomness that goes on, whether we want to admit it or not. And like we've talked about in the past, I mean, I do my best. I try my hardest at the research. I get the job done. I had a busy week this week, but I still got all my research done. Not as in a timely manner as I did in the past, but I still got it done. And as a result, I still do acknowledge that there's plenty of times when I'm wrong, and that's totally okay with me. Because we're doing predictions, right? And we don't know specifically how these things are going to go out. So it's not as if like, oh, shame on you, you got this wrong. No, far from it. It's not good to be a know-it-all, right? Being a know-it-all that a subject just essentially means that you're bored by it, and there's just nothing more to try and improve upon, right? So, it is something that I like to embrace. I go on, I do my homework, I try my hardest, but at the end of the day, there are still plenty of times that I'm wrong. I try my hardest to be right, but it's just a reality that I would like to accept, right? Got another comment in here. Shawnee Mack, how many experts do you think sign up for other Patreon website and pass the information off as their own? I don't know, man. That's just it would just be purely speculation. I don't even know if that's a real thing. That would just be I have no information to sort of back that up, right? I have no idea to answer that question in short, but yeah, I'm not somebody who I don't really think about that sort of stuff in general. I'm just more so focused on me and the people that I interact with on a day-to-day basis. I don't know. I know that everybody has their own sort of preferences on what they want to think about, but that's personally just not something that's on my list of things on my agenda, right? So again, that's just something that there are plenty of people's opinions that I respect that are out there. I just sort of tune everything out because I want to have that independent thinker type process, because it's just boring, right? People say that on podcasts all the time, right? Like when the co-host and the host are just going through the fights and they're agreeing on everything, it's just kind of boring, right? At least from some of the viewers' experience, that's what they say, right? But when you're doing your research and you're not, like when I picked Poirier against McGregor, I wasn't just picking him just because everybody else was on Conor. No, I actually did the research and I just came out with the prediction that Poirier was going to beat him. And I looked at the camera in the various podcasts that I was on that week. Shout out to Squares and Sharps. Shout out to Z's MMA. There was plenty of other ones that I was on. And I just told myself, like, and even before I got on camera, like, I am okay if I get this wrong. Like, I will be okay. I will look at myself in the mirror if I'm wrong with this thing at the end of the day. But it's just, I got to take a stand, right? If I believe that this thing, if there's value on this underdog, I want to take that chance, because here's the thing that we sort of remember, right? That sticks with us, right? We don't really remember, if one opinion is just consistent throughout the whole industry, right? For instance, on UFC 261, everybody's picking Usman for the most part, right? Well, maybe not everybody, but a lot are. Everybody's picking Usman, and I get it. Usman's the rightful favorite. I get why everybody's picking him. But after this event plays out, let's just say hypothetically Usman wins. Let's say he wins, whatever, by decision, right? It's going to be like kind of business as usual for our minds for like everybody that picked Usman, because that seemed like the most likely outcome. However, if there's people out there that are picking Masvidal and if they can mount a solid argument as to why they think Masvidal wins, and Masvidal does happen to go out there and win, maybe not in the exact way that person lined up, but if he still goes out there and wins, people are going to remember that person that was on Masvidal was able to back up why they were on Masvidal, right? And I'm not saying I'm on Masvidal here, but I'm just saying that sticks with people more, being that independent thinker for a matchup. And I'm not saying that, that matchup is like right or wrong to do it. I'm just throwing out an example. Like, that's, again, if somebody thinks Masvidal could win and they come out a solid argument, more power to him. I mean, I respect that a lot. I mean, that's the thing about this game is I think it is tremendously respectful if you could form your own opinion and back up why you're on that side. That goes a long way. That is longevity to the max. Like if you're able to show up and do that consistently, people will really like you, right? I mean, they will like respect your opinion, and you will succeed, right? So, just listening to every single podcast, like a lot of people kind of sort of by chance, if you will, are on the same side. But again, if you, for those guys that are on the opposite side of the popular side, the consensus side everybody's on, and they're able to back up why, that sticks with people more. Because I had people asking me after the McGregor fight. I got a lot of props about Poirier upsetting McGregor, and I said, look, I mean, there was a chance that Poirier could have lost, but the thing that I need to remind myself is that this is a high variance game. Like there is a chance that Poirier could have won, and there's a chance that Poirier could have lost against McGregor. It's not as if that fight was only going to play out one time, even though we only got to see it play out, well, technically twice because of the rematch. We only got to see one outcome, but there are various outcomes as to how that fight could go down. And maybe the trilogy is different, right? But that's the biggest thing that I've learned recently is just realizing that there are many different outcomes that could take place when the bell rings and the fighters just have at it in the octagon. There are numerous different ways that a fight could play out, not just how we think it could go based on whatever, our research. We get fooled by randomness sometimes, if you will. Shout out to that book. That's an awesome book, by the way. It's about just sort of like realizing that, and a lot of just, sports outcomes, just stuff in the markets, just a lot of the stuff is volatile, like higher variance. And we may act like we're geniuses in hindsight because like it just so happened that we were on, the outcome that we thought would happen. But at the end of the day, there's plenty of times where it doesn't happen, right? And that's just something that I'm more than okay with accepting. Like I said a few minutes ago, just I'm more than okay with being wrong. It's happened more than once. I could look at myself in the mirror and be okay with it because I tried my best. I have good intentions, and I put a lot of effort into this research process. So, and it's just kind of a blessing to just, who wants to be perfect anyways, right? Like if there's room to grow, room to improve, it gives you something to work for, right? Not just if you're perfect sitting at top of the hill, like, it kind of could be pretty boring, right? I mean, that's just my thoughts anyway. People could agree or disagree with it if they want, of course. I don't take it personally. It is business as usual. So, do you guys want to talk a little bit about just some fights? I mean, I think that, we got some pretty interesting fights here. I mean, there's a lot, like we said off the top, there's a lot of newcomers, a lot of fighters that just very inexperienced in the UFC. Maybe they have one fight or something like that. But there's just some real fun fights on here. I think Brendan Allen versus Carl Roberson. It seems like if Allen gets the fight to the ground, he'll have his way. But if Roberson keeps it standing, he could have his way, the kickboxer. So pretty binary fight in that sense. Dana Batagrel, coming off a knockout loss. We know Natividad's been knocked out more than once. Maybe he is able to do it again. Though Natividad, there's some potential he grapples here a bit. I know we didn't get to see him do it against Johns, but Johns is also a good wrestler, whereas Batagrel, we saw him taken down by Alateng in round 3 of his first UFC fight. So that's just something that is another maybe bias that we might have, like just because Natividad was knocked out by Johns and Batagrel's coming off a knockout, it makes it seem like Batagrel by knockout is like the most likely outcome, when that might not be the case. I mean, he could still go out there and win by knockout, don't get me wrong, but it's not as if that's the only way that the fight could play out. So yeah, let's just, I guess, switch on over to DraftKings real quick. We got, I think a lot of opportunity here. I think obviously we're going to see a lot of these fighters in the main events, in the title fights, get a lot of love, and I totally get it. But it makes for interesting from an ownership perspective, because it makes the ownership fairly predictable in that sense. I also think that, fighters like Jim Crute is going to get some love. Brendan Allen, Chris Weidman, I think, will get some love based on the odds value. So Rose based on her price, and even like we said, Masvidal and Andrade as well. So those are spots like we talked about on the AMA last week. I'm a multiple lineup type of guy. I like to make a bunch of lineups. I just personally think for me, it is just far too. It would be foolish of me to not make less than the amount of lineups that I make. And again, that is not something that I'm saying that is objectively the right or wrong way to approach DraftKings. I'm just trying to say why I do it. But it's just a spot where I want to be conscious of how much ownership I have of these higher owned fighters, because they're not going to be a secret. And it's not to say that they can't go out there and put up a big score, but there's also a chance that they don't. It's a legit possibility, and that's why I want to make multiple lineups. I want to cover different possibilities. I know that I can't cover every outcome with 150 lineups, but at least I'm putting myself in a better chance to be contrarian and just make a construction that just I don't think a lot of people will have, because it seems fairly obvious who the popular fighters are going to be, and some of them still may be on the optimal lineup, but there's also a chance that some of them might not. So help me God, it says I missed the free picks. Yeah, man. I mean, look, I appreciate you. It might not be this way for forever. I mean, I'm not ready to guarantee. I'm not going to guarantee forever. Anything could happen in the future, of course. Yeah, this is what's happening though right now. This week and for the foreseeable future, in all likelihood. Yeah, I appreciate you guys as always. I did the free picks at the beginning of this year after going paid for the previous year. And so, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of great content out there, guys. Like we talked about off the top, there's just a lot. And there's a lot of great guys out there that they do their homework and they give out their content for free. I still plan on showing up on YouTube and doing the whole bit. And then even like, if you want to hear my picks, but maybe not so much like the full analysis, at least for this event. MMA Oddsbreaker staff picks, we release those tomorrow in the morning usually. So you won't only get my predictions for the event, but you'll get a lot of other very sharp people as well. There's a lot of big names in there. I'll leave it to you to find out who it is if you're interested. But yeah, I get what you're saying though, man. It's important to, because I can see where you guys are coming from. You don't want just my picks. You want to know why I think that the guy's going to win or whatever, and lay out the path to victory. Because I respect you guys a lot for doing that, because that's not the most important thing. Not just who do I think is going to win. I can't act as if, because if you just saw my predictions, if I didn't give a reason why I'm on a certain guy, you might think like it would be tough to gauge my confidence level in those sort of predictions and sort of the path to victory and things like that. So it doesn't. Giving a prediction just in a paragraph or something like that doesn't paint the full picture on my true analysis of a matchup. Like I have to make a prediction, but maybe I think the fight is like a coin flip, but I still have to make a decision at the end of the day. So thank you for that. Uncle Rafi, have you spoken about the Dwight Grant fight? I'm curious if you think it goes the distance or not. I have not. Thank you for bringing that up. I mean, it could finish and it could go the distance. I know that might not be the answer that you maybe want to hear, but I'm just trying to be honest with you. It is a fight where Grant is obviously very dangerous and athletic and physical and that sort of thing, and he hits very hard. And Sekulic, we did see him get rocked by Emiev. And an interesting stat that I came across with Emiev was Emiev's only knocked down in 6 UFC fights. He's just not really known to be a big power puncher. And so Grant is a power puncher. So based on Grant's athleticism, he's just been much more active than Sekulic. Obviously, Sekulic has not fought since like 2018. So there's just a chance that like Sekulic might show up a little rusty and Grant's just a lot faster than him and just catches him with a big shot. But I see where you're coming from on the second part of that question, because with Grant, he is a lower output type fighter. And, we've seen it in fights where he doesn't get the knockout, that the fights tend to go. And that doesn't guarantee that because he doesn't get a knockout here, that it'll for sure go the distance. But he just is a very low output guy, I think, because he just throws his strikes with such power rather than trying to focus on technique. And with Sekulic, I don't know what to make of him exactly. He seems to excel as a grappler. We have seen Grant struggle in the grappling realm. We've seen him get his back taken twice. We've seen him get taken down. I just don't know if Sekulic is on the level of those guys like Pedersoli and Joban. And I know Grant went on to beat those guys, but it's a tougher, higher variance fight to call. And if you're asking me, do I think it finishes or do I think it goes the distance, one of the two? I mean, it's honestly a coin flip, brother. It really is. So it's not something that I would want to bet on personally, but I wish you the best of luck on any action that you have on the card, man. So thank you. So help me God contributing again. What's up, man? So Zhang has shown she could clearly get hit. Rose could find her mark as she has even in her Andrade. Do you think public lines reflect too much on recency bias for Zhang? I mean, like, that's a thing, right? I think that, yeah, like in a sense that they do affect recency bias is a real thing, right? But at the same time, it's like I whenever I analyze fights, I don't really like look at just the recent fight. I want to kind of gather like the past few, how they've sort of looked, and preferably start from the least recent up until the most recent. And so, like, yeah, we did see Zhang get hit a lot by Joanna, and certainly Rose will have opportunities to hit her. I just don't know that taking that snippet of information guarantees that Rose wins this fight, right? Like, I have my concerns for Rose. Like, I think she could win this fight. They're both good technical strikers. They have power. They both move well. But the biggest concern I have for Rose, or a couple of them, well, one, I don't think she's the more varied striker here. I think that Zhang has more diversity with her kicks. Specifically, I think she could have success chopping the leg of Rose. Zhang is willing to land the leg kicks, and we've seen Rose get her leg chewed up against Joanna, for instance, even against Andrade the second time. And also the cardio, right? Like the cardio of Rose, she doesn't have bad cardio. She certainly doesn't have bad cardio, but we have seen her slow down. In the second Andrade fight in round 3, we saw her slow down against Joanna the second time. So those are kind of the reasons why I agree with Zhang being a favorite. And I sort of agree with, like, yeah, maybe she's a little too big of a favorite because it was a fight of the year with Joanna. That is a possibility, though I don't know that that's the reason why she's such a big favorite. Do you get what I mean? Like, I'm more so placing emphasis on the stylistic matchup rather than the hype factor, because we could all get caught up in the hype if we sort of read all these different articles that talk about how great these fighters are. And these are great articles and everything, but there is such a thing as analysis by paralysis, or excuse me, paralysis by analysis. I want to only consume so much information and not sort of get sucked into it and not, because if I think about, if I look at too much information, I won't think clearly. Like, that's why I'm sort of developed this process where I want to hone in on my process, look at the stylistic matchup, draw a conclusion on who wins and why, and then sort of move on to the next thing and not really think about it. Right. I think that's for me a big way that I found success. So yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I do think that Rose is live for sure. But yeah, as far as the prediction goes, I think Zhang still probably wins. What else we got here? I'm pretty excited for the debut of Sabatini, CFFC guy. He's facing Tristan Connolly, a fellow grappler as well. Randy Brown and Charles Oliveira could be fun. I mean, there is some opportunities here. I mean, we might get surprised with one of these newcomers, right? Like, we just don't have a lot of information on some of these fighters. And I know that people want predictions at the end of the day, but you can only be so confident in a prediction when you have such limited footage of a fighter, right? And those are just spots that I don't want to bet on. I only want to bet on spots that where there's sufficient data to make me feel good about a position and you know, essentially go for it, right? So that's just my philosophy. And you know, people can make their decisions at the end of the day. I just say why I'm making X decision, and everybody makes their own decision at the end of the day. It's completely on us what decisions we want to make. Steven is in here again. What's up, Steven? How do you like Crute at face off? Yeah, I mean, like, Crute and Smith had a pretty interesting face off. Like, or you mean like in terms of like the physicality? I mean, like, Crute, like, bigger guy as we probably expected, more like physical. Smith a little longer. Yeah, the mullet, that was awesome, right? But yeah, I mean it's a tricky fight to call, to be honest. Like I understand why Crute is the favorite, but it's just a matter of like, is he ready for this step up in competition, right? Because we know Lionheart Smith is not an easy test for a lot of these guys, right? You need to be a certain level to beat Anthony Lionheart Smith, and we're going to find out if Crute is. I know he had a little bit of a slip up against Serkinov. He made a couple of mistakes on the ground. Serkinov reversed them and ended up getting the submission. But that's not to say that for sure that Smith is going to submit him on the ground. I mean, that's sort of the trap that I feel like a lot of us could get caught up in, because there is reason to believe Crute's such a young guy that he has learned from that, right? There is reason to believe that his experience getting better. He could have learned and grown from that. And he is just a guy that I do have high hopes for Crute. Is he ready for Smith? We'll find out. We don't really know truly if these guys are ready for these step ups in competition unless we actually see them in there. I know that people want these answers sort of now. And I think there's a legit chance that Crute just goes out there and looks dominant, but I can only be so confident in a guy who's only been past the first round once in the UFC. I mean, I know that he has some 5-round experience on the regional scene, but I can only be so confident in Crute. Like, I like that he looked good at weigh-ins, like circling back to your question or your statement rather. But you know, I can only be so confident in the guy. I like him. I bet him last time. I have high hopes for him. We'll see how he looks. Other than that, like we kind of talked about DraftKings a little bit. I told you guys I'm not going to give away my bets. You can find that on dailyfanmma.com on the betting hub. But I encourage you guys, if you are going to check out Brett Appley's site, to look at all the other content. It's not just a site for betting. We have great DFS resources, optimizers, projections, ownership, which is super important. Projections for points. We have PFL content, Bellator content. So it's a one-stop shop for everything, right? And so I really encourage you guys to check that out if you want. That is, if you want to check out my betting hub content, I would encourage you to check out everything else that is up there, because it's tremendously helpful and great for long-term success. I used it myself. I was using the optimizer this morning, and it worked out great. Flawless process. I had an easy time. It was straightforward, and loved it. So other than that, I think we're about ready to wrap up, guys. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. I want to wish everybody the best of luck. Thank you guys so much in the chat. I appreciate your input. It's always welcomed. I'm going to be signing off. AJ here, wishing you all well, and take care.